exporting out, say, a 12DA file or a DWG file, pretty straightforward, but we do want to use the parameter value file and just change it up a little bit. Essentially put the date or something as the output of the file name. So just created a chain, started a chain, put a couple of comments in there to get us going. And I want to record this panel, which is essentially just going to write the 12DA file. So I'm just going to write the data out on the view, and to get us going, I'm just going to write out the file called design. So you can either record the panel, that's definitely one option, to record that panel into the process of the chain. The other option we do go through in the training is the option manual, which is again, it just saves or captures the data on the panel. So you can see that there. It doesn't run the panel, but it's just captured the panel. So if I was to finish the panel down and then preview it again, you can see that it's remembered the position where it was and the way it was filled out last time. If you do capture the data, you do also need to capture the buttons you would need to run that panel. So I need to come in here, capture the panel to obviously write the file. You can see it's put the button in there, and then also to finish the panel. So it's all ready to go now, so I could close the panel down. If I was to execute the command, 12DA would go through, write out the 12DA file, and I've now got a new 12DA file. Just go into Explorer, there it is, design.12DA file there. So it's written that out. You can see that's working perfectly fine. I want to change the output file name, but not to actually use the word design, but to put a date in there. The date possibly before the word design, so that every time I write out the design, I know what date it was actually issued, and I can track that then. So I'm going to use this parameter value file, pass down the value file, the value that I want, which is going to be the date. So I tend to keep the parameter value files named the same as the chain so that they go together. I'll just open this one up. You can see it's a new one, blank. So I'm just opening that one up, and I'll just put in a new parameter that I want to place in here. So there's a whole bunch of different parameter types that you have. Integer, real, text, and those are all listed in the help if you want to have a bit more look at the detail of those. You probably do find you use the same ones quite often, text and real. I could obviously, for a date, I could put in real so they can only put in numbers, but I'll just leave it as date. I need to put the parameter name in, so I'm going to actually put the word date in there, and then the value that I want. So I'm going to put in maybe year, month, day, that sort of format that I'd want to put in as the date. And I'm going to write that file in there now. So I've got the parameter in there. So I'm going to finish here, and that's been saved into that value file. It's an XML file in the background. So coming to my panel itself, which you can see here, I want 12D to pass that parameter into the panel. So you can see here under the panel, you've got the parameters, and I can actually pick which field on the panel itself I want that answer to go into. So I'm going to just click here, pick parameters. Now it opens up, and it basically has already looked at the parameter file that I've got loaded in there. If it wasn't there, you could actually type in a new name here now, and it would also make the parameter file. So there's two ways to do this. You can make the parameter file first, or as you're actually recording the panels, you can record the parameters. So there's two ways to get the same answers. So what I need to do is pick the field, or pick where I want the answer to go. So I'm going to go there, pick here, and you'll see what it'll do is it's going to come up here, highlight that actual field where the output file name is going to live. So I'm going to select that there, and it now knows actually the output file, that's the current piece of text that it is in there, and then what parameter do I want to pass into that field, into that part of the panel. So you can see the two ways. Because I've already got the date there, and I've already typed that in, I could do a right mouse button and actually place in there the word date. Or if you wanted to, you could actually just say, Fred, just make something up. And as I go set and finish here, it will generate that parameter and save it back in the parameter file. So, or the parameter value file. So I'm going to set that there. You'll see that. Just put the word Fred here. Not that useful. And if I open up the parameter value file again, you'll see that it's basically saved that answer of Fred back into the value file. So Fred's pretty well useless. I don't really want that one there, but you can see that idea. You can actually build the parameters from the panel back into the value file, or you can just type in the parameters that you know that you want and then just fill them out here. So where that field was, I'm going to come onto the parameter value file here and just say, yes, actually I don't want Fred, I'm going to use the date. I better write that one so that Fred doesn't exist anymore in that list. And if I do a right mouse button, you can see the parameters that I've already defined in the value file, and that's what it's going to use. Cool. So if I finish here, write the chain just to get it going. I'm going to run the chain. Happy days, it'll go through. It'll now write out the 12DA file, And as you can see, opening up Explorer, I've got the year, day, date, month, month. So perfect. That's, well, close, but not really what I want. But it's definitely passed down the value, the piece of text, into that field. So I want to tweak it up a little bit. I want to change the value file again so that it's not just that strange answer. And if I preview it, you can see it's now put that answer in there, year, month, month, day, date. I actually want to have that and possibly the word design after it or something. So it's basically a combination. So I want sort of that as the answer. So I'm going to come back to the parameter value file, open it up, put in a new parameter under the date here. I'm going to call this output 12DA file name. That's a big long piece of text, but that's just the name of the parameter I'm going to use there. And what's the value that I want, which is essentially what we had over here. Again, is the year, day, date, month, month, and the word design. So that's going to be my value or my piece of text. Now, because I actually want the date and that piece of text, what I can do is actually replace all this with the word date in there. And if I put the square brackets before and after, or the name of what the parameter is, 12D will essentially pass that text as the date down into here, and I'll just write that down into here as being my output 12DA file name. So it's going to essentially do a combination of that parameter inside of that parameter, and I'm going to have that as being the written out answer essentially. So I'm going to write that out there, save that. Yep, cool. Come back into my panel. I'll finish that down. Come back into my panel here and change it not from the date parameter that I want, but the other one that we've specified, which is the output 12DA file name. So I'm going to write that, save that as the new answer, run my change just to check that it's okay, and you'll see now that it's going to have passed that year, day, date down, added it to the word of the design, and that's my new name. Gee, I'm creating a couple of 12DA files, but that sort of hopefully shows you can do that. Again, that's not that useful. I'd be better if I can actually get 12D to prompt for the parameters. And this is where this prompt, there's two ways to do it. There's a prompt for parameter tick box here. Tick box to turn that one on, prompting it. So I'm going to save that. Now, if I run it with the chain open, it actually won't prompt because we've got access to the value file. So what I need to do is just finish the panel down, and I'm going to come over to the recalculate panel here and just run the chain from here, so outputting my 12DA design data. So you can see now what it does to prompt you. It actually open up the parameter editor or the value file. So I could come back in here and I could change the values. I could put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or whatever value the date is. And as soon as I write and finish, it will then pass that date into this answer with the word design at the end. It will then get passed into the field and become the new 12DA name of the file as it's written out. So that's run through the chain, and you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and the word design. It might get a little bit confusing, but because when you run the chain, and it will remember the old value from last time, it might be a little bit confusing for users. Why do they only change that parameter and not that one? Because they're both available and you can't really hide one. So there is another option which you probably would prefer to go down. I'll just finish that off. Yes, it's gone through and written it. I'm going to come back in and edit the chain. So inside the chain, what I want to do is not essentially have 12D prompt for the parameters. I'm going to actually give the parameters for the user to, or I'm going to prompt it, but I'm going to give the user a chance to actually put the parameters in another way. So just come in and put a new command in here. It's under other, and the option's called prompt. So it's similar to the other method. It will actually prompt the user for an answer. And essentially you get to build a little 12D panel and get the user to see sort of the answers that they need to put in there. So we need to build this up. So I might just put in here 12DA data export. Then we might put in what do we want to prompt the message. So I'm just going to put in date of output. Whoops, forgot the T. Output. And the result that I want is what's the parameter that I want to actually capture is our date. So we definitely know that that's the one that we want the user to pass into the value file, then get passed into the file name and displayed. So on the panel, we get to display different widgets or different answers, and you can have a number of these, so you can actually build this list to be quite big. I'm just going to do one so you can get see the format of it. So I'm going to put in here maybe the date format. and then the parameter, date in here. That's the parameter they're going to set, and it's not going to be optional. Absolutely not. They need to put an answer in there so that it gets saved and passed down. So that's going to be the top part of the panel. We then just need to create the rest of the buttons, which you'd normally have on a 12D panel, like the create button is our first button, and possibly a finish. So once it's run through, it will automatically finish off as well. So yeah, that would create a little prompt for us. And if I write that in there, we'd now have that as the prompting for the date. If you want to see how it works, and you can even do this before you write out the 12DA, so I'm just going to turn that step off. As I go through and run the panel now, you can see it's popped up and it says, hey, this is, and it's remembered the date format from before as well. Yeah, so I'm going to go in there, year, date, a month. That's American. And go create, and it would then pass that answer down. Now, just to check that it is working, another step we can do just to check this is working okay, we can clear as part of the change, we can actually clear the output window. So I can put that in there as a step, and there is another option in here as well under the other where we can write data out to the output window. So we can write out a different message to the output window that we need. And I'm thinking there what we could do is actually say, look, I do want to use one of the parameters. Let me just send out the date itself. So that way I can check and see that it's actually working correctly. So I'm going to write that. So just these 3 little steps. I could do all this and set up the prompting and the different messages I want the user to run through. And just to check that it'll work, I'm going to put in some different numbers. Where do we go? 9. That'll do. Go create. And then in the output window here, you can see it's popped up and it's given me the values here. It's written that out to the output window there, the values that I've typed in. So we're all ready to go now. Now that I know that that's working, it's actually creating or it's prompting me. It's giving me the right information. It's going to then be able to pass that down to my 12DA file. I probably do need to turn that one back on. And I would probably suggest come back in here and change the original answer because it did remember that weird value. I'd probably put in here the year again, just write that in there, because that one will be remembered and run the first time. So as I run this now, write that and run, you can see it's come up and it's prompting the date format that I'd want. So that it gives the user exactly sort of the format that you'd want to output the date in. So we could put in the right date. What have we got? 19th, 03, 30th, and we go, create that, and that would then get passed into the file, writing out the 12DA file, and voila. If I open up the Explorer, there's the date and the design there, so you can see exactly when the file was written, and it's just been added down through the process. So that's how we can create a parameter and actually pass it into the panel, get that parameter passed onto the actual field on the panel itself. Taking it another step further, you probably don't want to really, if I have a look at the view itself, I probably don't want to do the view. And there are a couple of different suggestions of how we could also set this panel up to be run to make it a little bit more interactive, because obviously I'm sending out a lot of data here. So we could definitely do a view. There's no problem with doing that. And I'll show you a couple of different methods that you could possibly use as well. To get us going, I'm just going to use the clone button up the top here to clone my design view. It'll essentially just take a copy. I'm taking a copy there, and I'm going to call this, it's just going to be a temporary view, so I'm going to go temporary temp 12DA output, and that's going to be the name of my view. There you go, and that's created the new view down the bottom there. So that's definitely easy to do. I could then customize this list a little bit, take out some of the cross sections. I don't want to send those out in the 12DA file, just the design strings themselves. So yeah, I could definitely select another view, but if you wanted to get away from the view, because sometimes the views do change, another method is actually to capture the list of the models. So up here I could actually say, look, I want to fill out this list of models, essentially what I have turned on the view. To do it quite quickly and easily, we can come up to the word models, and if you do a right mouse button, you can populate this list straight from the view. So I could have done it from the design view as well, but if I just go populate, you can see now it's got a list of all those models that I had turned on at the time, and that would be remembered in the list, essentially to be written out into the file. So again, I'd want to come back and capture the data, capture the panel as it is, and if I go finish, and just preview the panel again, you can see it's remembered that list for us. The good thing about recapturing the data, you don't need to pick the buttons again, you don't need to pick the parameter again, it's the same panel, you're just changing, I guess, the list of the data to be written out. So that's one way to do it. Probably not a way to take it from project to project, but so there is another way you could possibly set this whole process up to make it a bit more portable from project to project, which is the reason why I created the second view. What I could do is, if once you've got the view set up, hopefully you've used these view favorites before, essentially this is another way I can put in here, put in the name of the file, temp12da output, and by writing this temporary view file, it's basically got a list of all the models written, and it's also produced that list for me. I usually put a star in there, so if there's anything on the view, it will actually be taken off, removed, and then these models would be added on. So I could write that file out and place it in there. So the reason why I've done that is basically I've written that file, yes. I can then come in and I can get 12D to actually make a view. This is quite a good way to do it. Just to show this, I'll just obviously go through the 12D process here. And what I'm going to do to start off, it might seem a little bit strange, but I'm actually going to get 12D through the chain to delete this view. Delete the view that's just the temporary one. You can see it there, write that, and if I do execute it, execute that command, that view's been deleted essentially. So that's that step at the end of the process. What I really want to do at the top, come up here and I'll put a new option at the top here, is get 12D to, under views again, create my view. Where are we? In the list here, create a view. And you can see the name of the view. That's the name of the view I want to create. Just copy and pasted that in again, so it's all the same name. But you can see as I create the view, I can actually also get it to load a favorites file. So as part of this process, I can actually get to reload that list of models. So I'm going to write that into the process. The nice thing about this is that basically as the chain runs through, yeah, it'll create the view for me, but then it prompts. And the nice thing about that is when I run it, creates the view, there it is on the screen. It now prompts me, which is the next step, to be able to put my date in, but it now gives me a chance to actually change what's on the view. So in the next project, if it is slightly different, or next time I send the data out, I don't want to send out the alignments, just maybe the design strings, I could turn some data off. I could obviously put in the date, that's not a problem, we've set that one up. So what are we, 0331, go create. It would pass it down into the 12DA file, and then the view gets deleted. The problem is if I run it again, creates the view again, it won't actually have remembered. So if you do go and change what's on the view, take some things off, you'd want to have to also remember that you need to come back and recreate that temporary view favorites. Yeah, so basically rewrite it with the current list so that it only has the most current list. But that's a nice way to be able to prompt you. You can then add more models to the view, change it. So if you remember to create that view favorite, it would be then saved for the next time that it goes through that process to write it out again. So it's a little bit more advanced, but it is portable then to be able to take it from a project to another project. I hope that helps you with the parameter value files and just gives you some ideas of other ways you can also set up 12D to run with the chains.